Most portfolios for clients are flat for the year, which shows you we've had a broadening out. There's been some success. There's been some headline damage. But if I were to talk to clients about what to do, I'd undulate the accelerator right here, see if you can get a little more visibility into what's going to happen.
What do you mean? Like, just slow down back a little bit.
Slow down if you have cash to put to work.
Okay.
I'd slow down, but I would be at the ready, because we know that the number one bet we've been able to make over the last several years is don't bet against the White House. And that's not a political statement.
I know exactly what it is. It is the idea, as why I suggested that nobody is saying, even in an environment with so-called headline fatigue and maybe the market not paying attention to every word out of Washington over the last 24 to 48 hours, don't discount the ability of a headline or a social media post about a breakthrough regarding anything to dramatically move this market. I think everybody agrees with you on that. Now, in terms of pulling back a little bit, cautious, taking a look around through the fog and trying to figure out what's up. Citi's global asset allocation today, they cut equities to neutral because most of their negative equity signals are triggered. So they're just taking a step back and saying, you know what, like everybody else, we're not ready to make a call to play offense or not even necessarily to play defense. Just kind of wait and see.
I strongly agree with wait and see. I'm not quite as negative as Citi is. I will agree, and we're all saying the same thing. There are a ton of cross currents here. Yes, West Texas Intermediate is up. However, Dubai and Omani spreads are down. The spreads are all across the board. Friday, this is the fourth Friday in a row that we've been down. Does that mean that this will be the fourth Monday in a row that we're up? Nobody knows. And the right thing to do is to sit on your hands right now, not make any large moves. Don't get scared and panic right now. And be careful about thinking this is a great opportunity. There are a number of military assets, U.S. military assets, being moved in theater. This president has a history of not bluffing. I mean, that's just a fact. He has used these assets when they are moved in theater. So I would be cautious, but not to the point of selling anything. And one saving grace here that we haven't talked about is what's going on with earnings estimates for the S&P 500 overall. Those estimates are up 2% over the month since the conflict started. And they show 16% growth year over year if they come to fruition, which versus a 20 times forward multiple, I would say is actually a bargain. Will those come to fruition, those earnings estimates? Part of it's energy. Part of it, energy estimates have rocketed higher. But a lot of it is artificial intelligence build out still, and I don't think that's going to change.
What do you think? Well, heard everybody in their perspective. How do you see it?
I mean, we came into the year expecting rate cuts, and in the opening you were talking about us thinking about a 50% chance of a rate hike, and that's what breaks the earnings momentum. If we have inflation that affects the consumer, which we're already seeing with energy, if that trickles into corporate margins and ultimately earnings, then we have a problem. So I like Citi's call of pulling back and going neutral. I like what Rob said. It doesn't mean trying to time the market. That's a fool's errand. But I think having a little bit of dry powder, being able to buy the dips, but lowering expectations. I can't imagine that earnings aren't going to come down if we're sitting here a month from now and nothing's changed in the Middle East.
I think
this is a good point.
Kev nails it.
This is a very good
to check in on your market sentiment, because you were last on in January. You were optimistic, but said geopolitics was the biggest risk.
Got that one right.
Now that we're in it, are you leaning into this market, or are you more cautious now?
Yeah, I think for the foreseeable future, markets are going to trade based upon the outlook for oil and the potential end to the conflict in Iran. But what we saw earlier this week is yet another reminder for investors to not try and time the market, right? Because any one social media post or any one news announcement could dramatically change investor sentiment and also change market direction. So where does that leave us going forward? I think we have to look back to the underlying themes that were really driving markets last year and are continuing to drive markets this year, despite all of the noise and the volatility coming out of Iran and the impact of high oil prices on inflation and the economy.
So does $92 oil impact your bullishness at all?
It does to a degree. $100 oil impacts it even more. But I think just as quickly as oil prices shot up, they could dramatically come down as well. And we really need to hear some news about the successful passage of a non-Iranian tanker through the Strait of Hormuz, because that will relieve some concern with respect to the future of oil prices. But until that point in time, we're going to see more and more consternation, because the longer oil prices stay elevated, the more gas costs, the more consumers have to pay gas prices, the less they can spend. And as you know, 70% of economic growth comes from consumer spending. So higher oil prices could lead to higher inflation, which is going to have an impact on consumer spending, which will ultimately impact the economy. So hopefully this doesn't last too much longer.
Which would ultimately be a market headwind. So what do you do between now and figuring out if we are close to an end for this Iran conflict, but also what impact oil prices would have? I would say, would you buy a dip like today? But we've actually already seen a reversal just as we were preparing for this. So the S&P essentially flat right now. But are you buying the dips? Are you putting new money to work right now?
I am still investing following the same money and thematic trends that I was investing in prior to the initiation of this conflict in the Middle East, and that's AI infrastructure, aerospace and defense, which you could argue has only intensified now in terms of the need to restock our munitions and modernize our military capabilities, not just here in the U.S., but across the globe. The need for power, the need for cooling solutions, the need for memory, all of those themes are still in place right now. And if you look at some of those underlying companies in those areas, they're significantly outperforming the markets thus far this year. So perhaps that's where investors should continue to lean on, as we have as well.
Your theme for the year was follow the money.
Yes, indeed.
Talk to us a bit more about where the money's actually flowing and where it's leaving.
Yes. So I would say where it's flowing year to date is energy. Mm-hmm. And that's a large part due to this conflict right now. And that's why energy as a sector is up over 30% year to date.
Far outperforming
every other sector. What's lagging? Financials, information technology, consumer discretionary. And that shouldn't be too surprising, right? Investors continue to poke at the AI bubble, almost hoping it's going to burst because they feel too much money is being spent in that area, and those companies making all that spending won't achieve a return on investment for years to come. And they're right. But let's just follow where the money is being spent to find the investment opportunities today. The data center construction companies, the power companies, the cooling companies, and of course, the memory makers and the chip fabricators. Still, as we heard from Q1 earnings, or Q4 earnings rather, hopefully soon with Q1 earnings, still going strong and still seeing an inflow.
Marta, how would you characterize the markets here? Because prior to even this conflict starting, we were concerned about valuations. We were concerned about the impact of AI. We were concerned about that AI trade sort of wearing out and the displacement various sectors would face. And yet here we are embroiled in this conflict, and we're, less than 5% from highs?
Yes, right. There has been one problem after another for markets. Of course, the AI concern was a bit more localized, focused on areas of disruption, industries of disruption, and of course the Mag 7. And now we're looking at something with the geopolitical conflict that's far more widespread across the markets. But to your point, we're not seeing markets off all that much. And I think that suggests that investors are trying to weigh a whole number of different scenarios. There's, of course, the worst case scenario that we worry about with a long delay in opening up the strait and destruction to energy infrastructure. But there's also these more mild scenarios that act more like a classic shock where we do get a recovery quickly. And I think it's anyone's guess as to which scenario we're looking at today.
Michael, it's certainly easy to suggest that the S&P maybe is looking a little bit on the bright side, given that it's not down that much. On the other hand, we got to these levels 6 months ago. Earnings have continued to rise, so therefore valuations have compressed. And I think also it's probably taken a while for the narrative to shift and people to kind of come to terms with the idea we're not going to have a run-it-hot start to this year with the Fed cutting rates. So where do you see the risk-reward setup here, given you've seen some financial tightening around the edges?
Yeah, well, the conflict has now brought back the persistent anxiety around inflation that really got kicked off with the 2022 inflation shock. And since then, the last 3 years, besides AI earnings, the real most important thing for the markets have been the up and down in interest rates and where the Fed is going. And we got all the way to the record low credit spreads near the end of last year. as oil was low, interest rates had come down, the Fed was supposed to keep cutting, and all of that has kind of certainly been on pause or have gone the other direction. So I'm less concerned about the economy. I think the U.S. economy can certainly handle $90, $100 oil. I'm a little more concerned about interest rates and the fear of persistent inflation weighing on equity multiples. So the market's not down that much, and that's partially because the earnings numbers continue to move higher across large, mid, and small caps. But the decline has all come from multiple compression to the tune of about 6-7% so far. So it's effectively like we just wiped off 7% in earnings. Of course, that could be flipped around. We didn't. But if oil prices come down, of course, those multiples will go right back up, and interest rates will decline as well. So we continue to see this as just an oil-driven, one variable market. It's driving the bond market. Oil and interest rates are driving the equity market. And for now, I think markets are priced appropriately for where conditions are, and will continue to move and react as conditions evolve.
Marta, would you agree with that assessment, or do you think that oil at $100, $90, let's say, that will actually impact the economy?
You know, what I really liked about the Fed meeting last week was ironically what a lot of people dismissed, which was the summary of economic projections. And when we look at what the Fed was articulating there, we did see this spike to inflation for 2026, but we saw that roll through pretty quickly and inflation come back down to norm in 2027. We saw economic growth expectations revised higher and not necessarily a change to labor. And that reflects that classic Fed view that you can look through these oil price spikes. And that's what history does tell us. And so my base case is aligned with this view that we're not necessarily at a point of great vulnerability. But I think we do have to watch how this plays out, because there is a worst case scenario out there that we haven't really grappled with, at least from a market pricing standpoint.
The lagging side of the trade right now.
I would rather lean into where the money is being spent now, as opposed to where the money being spent will ultimately benefit them down the road, because that may be years down the road. So lean into where the money is being spent as opposed to who's spending the money right now.
Are you taking advantage of the energy trade at all, or is it too late?
Yeah, I'm a little dubious of the energy trade right now. There are certain energy companies that we do have investments in, but we had investments in prior to the start of the conflict, because I think once we get some more noise or some more chatter about a potential resolution, you're going to see energy prices drop just as quickly as they rose. But they're going to be staying elevated for some period of time going forward. But the Federal Reserve realizes that as well. And that's why I continue to tell investors, don't expect too much out of the Federal Reserve this year. They told us last week, maybe one more rate cut this year of 25 basis points. Markets are pricing in no rate cuts. I'll take the difference there, either 0 or 1, but no more than that at this point in time.
But if the Fed isn't going to come to the rescue with even maybe one more rate cut, what is it that's going to drive the market from here?
Yeah, I don't think the Fed needs to come to the rescue. Remember, look at fourth quarter earnings, the 6th consecutive quarter of double-digit year-over-year earnings growth. That's pretty good. We have wages rising faster than the rate of inflation right now. We also know that money continues to be spent at all these areas that we just outlined before. And the market now, thanks to this pullback, is now trading at more realistic valuations on a historical perspective. So that tells me that there's more upside from here. We also learned from the Federal Reserve last week that they increased their forecast for GDP growth this year to 2.4%, while maintaining their outlook for unemployment at 4.4%, right where it is right now. So if labor's not going to worsen, if the economy is going to grow a little bit more than the Fed expected back in December, and they only think inflation is going to go up to 2.7%, that strikes me as the Fed doesn't need to do much more, and there's plenty of catalysts in place already once we move past, obviously, the conflict in Iran.
What needs to happen for you to change your mind and be less bullish? How long does this conflict with Iran need to last? How long do we need to see high oil prices?
Sure. Obviously, if this continues through and into the second quarter, if in fact other countries get pulled into this conflict and it doesn't stay just about opening the Strait of Hormuz, that would make me revisit my entire outlook. But that's not our base case right now. I do think there will be an end to this conflict. I do think we'll start to see tankers moving through the Strait of Hormuz, and I think there will be less pressure on oil prices. Now, the long-term stability of the Middle East, the long-term stability of Iran, question mark, question mark. But once we get oil prices to start to moderate, then investors shift their focus back, and that's when follow the money comes back into play again.
Is the conflict in Iran, though, something that the market can look through? Or is it something that needs to be resolved before there's a clear direction either way? Or do we just need to be prepared for more volatility?
I think we need to be prepared for more volatility. But what the market told us yesterday is just one social media post about talks taking place between the U.S. and Iran, or at least an intermediary between the U.S. and Iran, really move markets higher.
That Iran actually came out and said wasn't the case.
They didn't, but now we heard that perhaps they weren't in talks, but an intermediary was. So the story lies somewhere in the middle there, but clearly something is taking place, and markets are looking for any kernel of positive information to be bullish once again. So I think the underlying sentiment remains bullish. Otherwise, we would have seen a much more severe pullback already.
Okay, so Kevin, tell me, if I gave you fresh capital to work with right now, what are some of the names that you'd be scooping up here?
Sure, I would start on the aerospace and defense side. How about L3 Harris? Obviously, we've seen very successful missile interceptors. We also need to restock our own missile supplies here. And if, in fact, we want to seriously spend money on building our own Iron Dome capabilities, L3 Harris would have to be one of those benefactors. If I want to think about AI infrastructure, how about Micron Technology? We just learned from them the last week that they killed it in terms of earnings, in terms of revenues, lifted their forward-looking guidance, and there's an insatiable demand for memory out there, particularly from their largest client, who is NVIDIA, who needs more memory now for their next advanced AI chip, which is their Rubin chip. So I really like Micron. And here's a name most of your listeners don't know of right now, but Eaton Corporation. Big old boring Eaton Corporation, right? An infrastructure play. But they've been in the news lately too, because they just had their bond sale to help finance the acquisition of liquid cooling specialist Boyd Thermal. So they're leading more into the data center play as well. You want to talk about cooling? How about Vertiv? Vertiv, which supplies the cooling capabilities to data centers already, their stock's up significantly year to date. And I can never talk about AI and not talk about Taiwan Semiconductor, the largest dedicated chip foundry in the world, which boasts NVIDIA also as their largest client. So if you really just look at all the other benefactors sitting around NVIDIA,